Welcome to My Life. I'm John Ochins here with Nancy Gleisner in Oxford at her lovely home. This is part 2. We covered a lot of ground initially. Nancy told us about her early years in Washington, D.C., eventually working as a stewardess for the airlines and meeting her world-traveling husband, about dates in Kuala Lumpur and Rome, etc., etc. So now you're going to settle down. Well,
yes,
kind of. And you said that the first home that you and your husband purchased here was in West Bloomfield? Mm-hmm. Okay, tell us about that.
Okay, it was a little tract home. All the homes there were pretty much the same. It was adjacent to a lake. We had lake privileges. And it was on a cement slab and had 3 bedrooms, a bath and a half, a kitchen, kind of a family room, and a big fenced backyard.
Now, at this point, were you still working for the airlines?
No, when I married, I quit the airlines.
Okay, but your husband was like a manufacturer's representative?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and who was he working for at the time?
He was, well, actually, he had his own firm called St. Lawrence Sales.
Okay.
And at that time, he wasn't working for anybody. He was doing his own importing.
Self-employed.
Yeah. Of still skis, poles, ski boots, all kinds of ski equipment.
He was really into skiing, wasn't he?
Yes, very much so. And I went to, we had our honeymoon in St. Moritz, and I had to learn to ski real fast.
Did you?
Yeah, of course.
Did you continue that, long after?
Other than horses, it was one of the things that I loved best in the world.
Was it really?
Yes. I love skiing.
Okay. Did you get involved with horses back around that time?
Yeah. When we were living here in Michigan, Bloomfield Open Hunt was almost on the rocks, and they had a very inexpensive initiation fee of $1,000, and we were pretty poor at that time. But we scraped that together, and we went and joined the Bloomfield Open Hunt.
Wow.
And we rode their horses for a while, and then sooner or later, we got into our own horses.
You probably made some good contacts over there, too.
Well, yeah, through the years.
How long did you live there?
10 years in Bloomfield Hills, and in 64, did I say? I built the house here. He was in Europe.
You built the house here.
And I think that was in 64.
How did you make up your mind to come out this way?
Well, because of the horses. We got involved with it. We both loved horses. That was the reason why we joined the Bloomfield Open Hunt. Mm-hmm. Gave us a chance to ride what horses were there. Eventually, we bought a couple of horses.
Did you?
Yeah.
Where'd you keep them?
At the BOH for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then we decided, we came out here for the hunts. My husband hunted, trailered out. We decided we wanted to build out here, and we bought some land up at Hosner and Huff in Metamora. And then we got acquainted with Major Robert Borg and Red Duffy. Did I tell you this? Mm-hmm. And they wanted us next door. So we sold the land up there and bought this parcel of 26 acres, and I built the house while Henry was in Europe. And
Tell me about that. I mean, here you are, a retired stewardess, and you would have been about how old at this time, would you think?
Well, I was 26 years old when we were married, so this was about 36 years old.
Mid-30s.
Yeah.
And your husband says, honey, build me a house.
Well,
not quite.
Not quite. It's just that, I wasn't going to let a builder build the house while I was over in Europe. And he kept calling me and saying, get over here. And I kept saying, no, I can't do that. And it's a good thing because I noticed that this foundation was caving in, and a few other things like that had to be fixed. There was water coming through the walls that had to be fixed in the basement.
Wow.
And it was a good thing that I was here.
Sounds like you had a few headaches there, didn't you?
Yeah. The builder was not very great, and I think I was at his last job. and then he
Oh.
moved out of town.
Well, everything looks pretty good right now.
Yeah, the house didn't fall down.
So
Hasn't.
okay, go ahead. You were going to say something?
No.
Okay. Tell me about your husband's career from that point.
Well, from the skiing, he got, of course, interested in the horses, and he started also importing saddlery from a very famous saddler in Germany, and I can't remember the name of
That's
it
okay.
right now.
That's okay.
And he had in Royal Oak, he moved his offices from Royal Oak, where he had a warehouse, to Lake Orion. And I had a saddlery shop that was on around the corner from his St. Lawrence sales, the importing
So you
business.
opened a retail
Yeah,
shop.
yeah. And he wanted me to do that, and I absolutely hated it.
You did.
Yes. So I did not like working in retail. I was just not suited for this.
And roughly when would this have been?
Oh, well, after we moved up here.
Okay. And he retired from his business approximately when?
He had not retired.
He didn't?
No.
Oh, okay. What we haven't mentioned so far, well, I guess we did just barely mention it before because we talked about the book that her husband wrote called Defying the Fates, the remarkable story of a Jew who survived in Nazi Europe. Henry Gleisner is her husband's name. And I wanted to talk more about that with Nancy during this episode. So let's backtrack a little bit, Nancy. Your husband was, first of all, very involved with the Holocaust Memorial in West Bloomfield,
Yes,
I believe.
yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, he lectured there. He gave tours and lectured there.
Okay.
Told his story.
Were
Told
you
what
folks
happened to
one
him.
of the first people involved with the
Yes,
Holocaust
yes.
Memorial, putting it together and everything?
I don't know if you know David and Esther Littman. He was with the Michigan Bank, the head of the Michigan Bank at one time. And we made their acquaintance there. And she also was very involved with the Holocaust Memorial Center. That's where we met her. And we're close friends still today.
In trying to get into your husband's story, tell me, how did you find out about this stuff from him? Was he reluctant to talk about it?
I think I knew him a while before he did talk about it
Yeah.
and tell me about it. And he wanted to put it behind him. But Rabbi Sherwin Wine said, this is a remarkable story and you have to write it.
Yes. So let's talk about his background a little bit. Tell me about his parents and where he came from.
He was born in Vienna, Austria, grew up there, learned to ski in the Austrian Alps. His father worked for the Wiener Bankverein for Director Kiesler. And I think I told you that his daughter was Heidi Kiesler, who was Hedy Lamour.
Okay, we're going to stop you right there because we
Okay.
need to take a break. But we're going to hear more about Hedy when we come back. Back with Nancy Gleisner. Okay, Nancy, you were telling me your late husband knew Hedy Lamour.
When she was a little girl.
How about that?
And he was young. And that was his first great love.
Really?
Yes.
I mean,
And
he
he had-
knew her as a friend. He
No,
actually...
he just knew her as the director's daughter.
Daughter, okay.
And it was later on, after they both immigrated to the United States. They had no real acquaintance, but he
Sure.
just knew who she was.
Knew who she was.
And she became Hetty Lamar.
How about that?
And he knew that she was the daughter of the director of the bank for which his father worked.
Tell me about your husband's background as a boy.
He went to a very highly acclaimed grade school through high school in Vienna. Can't remember the name of it
That's
now.
all right.
Learned, I think, French. Of course, spoke German and English there. Studied it.
Mm-hmm.
Then his family, his family came from Krakow, Poland, and they were film producers.
Really?
One of the largest in Europe, other than the German firm, which was the big film producing
Yes, go
company
ahead.
in Europe. And I have a little CD, I think, of one of the first movies that they made in Poland. But anyway, his father went back to Krakow and Warsaw, Poland, when one of his brothers, who was the head of the company, died. His father, who was working in Vienna for the Wiener Bankverein. To take over the running of the company, and that's why they went back to Poland.
I see.
And his mother had a very hard time there because she was Viennese to the core and, of course, didn't know Polish. She
Right.
had to learn Polish.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not the easiest language to learn. They were actually in Poland when the war started.
All of them were living there, your husband along with his parents?
Yes, yes. They were in Krakow and then in Warsaw.
Mm-hmm.
And when they were in Warsaw when the war began.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all written about in his book.
Okay. So how old would your husband have been during this time?
He was in high school in Warsaw.
Okay. So he was in high school?
Yeah, and I think
When the war
graduated.
began?
Yeah, I think he graduated, and that's when they left Warsaw. I know that they joined a refugee group, and they were traveling with this refugee group, and they got caught up with in another part of Poland.
Uh-huh. Now your
they
husband's
were-
family was Jewish, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they were living in a ghetto, and I can't remember where it was. It will be in the book. And his father, there was one young man, and he and Henry would sneak out of the ghetto to buy food
Right.
and things like that for the family. And they were living in a cordoned off 10-foot square in the ghetto, and it was divided by blankets.
Did he have brothers or sisters?
No, he was the only child.
Okay.
So his father had a golden American $20 gold piece.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last money that he had, and he gave it to Henry and this other friend of his and said, "Get out of here, because you have to live,
Right.
and we can't get out, but you and this young boy can escape, and just get out of here."
And we have to bear in mind that these are all well-educated people.
Yes.
I mean, his
highly
dad was a
educated.
banker, wasn't he?
Yes, yes.
And he came to help rescue this film company, I guess?
Yes, when the man that ran it, the part of the family that ran it, died, he went
Yeah.
back to Poland to take over the film company.
Okay, so here they are in a ghetto after the start of World War
Yeah.
II.
Mhm. Before that, they lived in a nice apartment
Sure.
in Poland, but they were put into the ghetto because they were Jews. However, the kids could escape. And they did. And he visited his father once. He was incarcerated in a concentration camp in Rawaruska, Poland, I think it was.
So he was caught at some point after he
Yes.
left his family.
Yes, not Henry, his father.
His father was, okay.
And his mother was in Auschwitz.
Oh my.
And he found out where his father was, and he went and visited them. And the guards were kind of off away, and his father said, "Don't come back." And he died in that. Influenza or some disease broke out, and they killed all the prisoners
Yeah.
in that prison camp.
There was a lot of that.
And scorched earth, and then later on rebuilt it again.
Do you remember what camp that was? Doesn't matter.
No.
I was just curious.
No, I don't, but it will be in his
Yeah.
book.
Where did your husband go after that? What did he do?
He and this young man got a job out of a little town in Poland working for a road building company.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to go to Russia, but they were stopped at the border, I think, and sent back. They received a postcard. They were living in a part of an old widow's house, I guess, who fed them. And they paid her for their sustenance. And they both received report cards to report to a Nazi office in the area. And I think that his roommate went and disappeared. He didn't know what happened
He ran off.
to him. But he figured that he had better go, and he to show up there. Otherwise, they'd come looking for him, and
Did he have to? Did they at that time? Did they have to identify themselves as being Jewish?
Well, no,
Okay.
no. And his father had given him this last gold piece, and said, "Buy yourself some papers."
Right.
And he had Christian papers in the name of Tadeusz Kwistek. And I think somewhere still I've got those papers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where. And so he lived outside of the ghetto with this friend of his as Tadeusz Kwistek, and he was called into a Nazi office in Rawaruska, and he figured that he'd better go. And he said he jabbered so insanely, saying, what do you want with me? And, I have to do this or that, and I have a job, and I have to get back to it, and don't keep me here because I'll lose my job, and that kind of stuff. And they finally threw him out because he was such an idiot.
Okay. Well, in a manner of speaking.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. We need to take a break now, but we'll be
Okay.
right back with Nancy Gleisner.
Your local business.
Your police department.
Your local business.
Your Village of Oxford.
The schools. Your parks and recreation.
Your community.
Your community.
Only on OCTV.
Back with Nancy Gleisner on My Life. Nancy, the last thing we were talking about was when the Nazis summoned your husband into the office, and you were recounting his visit there. Let's start with that.
Yes. Well, he figured that he had better go because if they had to track him down,
Could be a bad thing.
yeah, it could have
Yeah.
been a bad thing. So he went in there and he babbled away like such an idiot that the commandant or whoever it was there called in his assistant and said, "Get this idiot out of here." And they threw him out of the Nazi office. So I think he went back to work. And he said that
Did he stay there in that country?
he had to stay there in that country.
Because Because the war
I
was
can't-
still going on,
Oh,
right?
yeah, very much so. I can't remember what happened next with him.
They didn't force him to go to work at a certain place or anything like
No,
that, did they?
no. He continued with the same job he had.
Okay.
It was road building, and they actually got to the border of Russia and got turned back. I think they were going to build roads in Russia,
Uh-huh.
and they somehow got turned back at the border.
Tell me, you may have mentioned this before, forgive me if you did, but did he ever see his parents again?
No. No, he knows that his mother died in Auschwitz.
So she,
And his father, they exterminated the camp because the father's camp came down with tuberculosis or something.
Right.
They actually burned everything, and then they rebuilt it again.
okay. So tell me, as the war wound down and your husband's life went on, how did his career evolve? He eventually got into, did he get into the manufacturing business, the manufacturer's rep business right away, or
Well, he
after the war?
He was in this road building business, and they wound up back in Austria somehow or other. And the American forces were there, I think it was near Vienna, back there again. And he applied to come to the United States, and he got permission and the visa, and he came to the United States.
Okay. Now, the book that he wrote is called, again, Defying the Fates, the remarkable story of a Jew who survived in Nazi Europe. Tell me how this book came about. What gave him the idea, or who gave him the idea to do this?
Well, I think Rabbi Wein said, you better write a book because nobody else's story is like yours.
Right.
And he was the one that pushed Henry into writing the book. Henry had not thought about it at all. In fact, he didn't want to think about it. He didn't want to think back over that part of his life. But Sherwin Wein kept after him, and he began to write it. And we were in this house when he started to write it. And he dictated to me directly into an old typewriter before a computer, one of those that you bashed on, an old Underwood or something like that, and dictated it, and first in English and then in German. A couple of years later in German. And that was published free for him in Vienna. He
Really?
went back to Vienna to the Holocaust Memorial Center there and lectured there as well. And through that, he became reacquainted with a friend of his whose daughter lived right here in Michigan. They were living in the Carolinas, I guess. And he was also a survivor that Henry had gone to school with, to the Wassergymnasium in Vienna.
Interesting.
And they connected again here in Michigan.
Wow.
And it was quite a thing. The two of them sat on the front porch and cried.
I can imagine.
Laughed and cried.
During the course of him dictating to you his story, did he digress often about various aspects of what he had gone through?
No, what's in the book is what he dictated,
Yeah.
right straight on through. He didn't digress a lot.
Did he?
And before then, I didn't know the whole story. But as I say, Sherwin Wein was after him to write this book
Yeah.
and said, you'd better do it.
Again, did he have any brothers or sisters?
No,
He didn't.
he was a
okay. He was an
single-
only child. Okay.
Yeah.
Did he ever say much to you about what it was like to leave your parents in the situation that they were in?
No, not until he started this. Not until he started dictating the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just didn't talk about it. He didn't want to remember it.
Wow. Did he say much about the Holocaust in general
No,
and then how that fit into the history of
No.
the world? And
no. I didn't know a great deal about it because he just didn't talk about it
yeah,
until he started to dictate this book. And that was because this rabbi, who didn't believe in God, by the way, but they were intellectually in tune, very much so, talked him into writing the book.
wow.
And
It's hard
that's
for me
when
to
I learned a
imagine,
lot
isn't
of
it?
this.
Yeah, exactly. If you could do anything over again in your life, would you do anything any differently?
I don't think so. I've had a very, very interesting, exciting life. I've lived in Munich, Germany. I lived in Afi, Italy, one of the most beautiful places in the world on the Lake Garda.
Do you still travel?
I went back in the fall after my husband died once to Italy. And I'd like to go back again, but it's an arduous trip. And I took a neighbor with me when I went back that one time afterwards. She'd lived in Europe also. She'd lived in Austria while her husband was working over there. And so she didn't speak the languages, but, you know, she was comfortable in Europe. And by that time, I had learned both German, which was an arduous task, and Italian, which was very easy because I had a Latin background in high school, Spanish in college, and once you know one Latin language, you know it's easy.
Sure, sure.
So
With your experience in the airline business, I would imagine you have a special appreciation with what some of those folks go through today. We hear these stories in the news about these terrorist events and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. That must have a special meaning to you.
yes, it does, very much so. I would almost be reluctant, afraid to fly nowadays.
Yeah. It's been
You know.
really special to have you on this show.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for joining us, Nancy Gleisner. And thank you. We'll see you next time. You're watching OCTV, Oxford Community Television, serving Oxford, Addison Township, and the village of Leonard.